Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais, and my co-host, Andrew Bobo, is on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Yeah, welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast. For those of you who watch this on, all of our social media, it's been 2.5 days barely since we did this again, but that's the miracle of meshing together weird schedules of weird people. So I've got Andrew back with me. We're going to branch out away from our usual content ever so slightly because Andrew's about to embark upon the interesting, exciting, and terrifying prospect of replacing his vehicle in 2023. And he's going to sit there stokely and make me just carry the water for this entire show, apparently. It's 8 o'clock in the morning over here, by the way, and I haven't finished my first cup of coffee.
I mean, it's 9 a.m. here. Stop crying. and I went to bed at 4 a.m., so...
Little thing.
I'm looking at vehicles. My Jeep is, for the most part, it's been doing pretty good, but it's got 227,000 miles on it. If I end up driving it to Arkansas, which I'm trying not to do that, but I might rent something. I don't know yet, but if I end up driving it, it's going to have well over 230,000 miles by the time the end of April comes around, just because of from now and then the long trip that I want to take. But no, I've been looking at trucks. I've been wanting a truck for a while. I've been looking at Toyota Tacomas, just because, one, the reliability of Toyotas, and then also just the aftermarket world is crazy out there. And then I've been looking at the 2023s just because the generation, the body style, like the style like that they're on right now with the Tacomas, with the body style and all the engineering that they've done with this new generation. The Generation 3s, like you have a Generation 2, I think.
Mm-hmm. I have the last year of the Generation 2s, so 2015.
Yeah, and then this is the last year of the Generation 3s, and I feel like they've had many years to work out any kinks as far as some things go. But they're working on the next generation, which is going to be the 2024 version. And they're changing a lot of stuff. It sounds like.
It's going to be a clean sheet redesign.
Exactly. Oh yeah, no, yeah, they're going from bumper to bumper, completely redesigning stuff, and to me that means new things to figure out. As far as some things go, they might have a couple hiccups here and there. I don't know, but
no, there's merit to what you're just saying though, because like the 2023 will be the last year of the Gen 3 Tacomas, and that dates back to 2016. So your engine, your transmission, those have been in production since 2016. Toyota's had plenty of time to figure it out. And like statistically, historically, all automakers are guilty of this to a degree. I find even Toyota, despite their reputation for reliability, but the first year they put out anytime they do a clean sheet redesign, the first year there's bugs. Like there's uncharacteristically un-Toyota bugs in the batch and lemons, and it's just a function of when you change so much. I hate to say it, but even Toyota can't get them 100% right the first try. Mm-hmm. It's better than most other auto manufacturers do on a clean sheet redesign, but it's not Toyota. After a year or two, you see customer satisfaction go up, you see the number of defects go way down, and then we're back on track for Toyota. So purchasing a 2023, you're in very much the same position I was in when I went looking for a 2015, because I could have also looked at 2016's, the first year of the third gen. Unfortunately, the third gen Tacomas in the very early years with the V6 only kind of had a reputation for issues with their valve trains and dropping valves and doing dumb stuff with their engines because the engines were brand new to that truck. And the transmission was as well. And the automatic transmissions were not well liked that first year or two. They had a reputation for hunting between gears and just doing weird stuff. Because Toyota, starting in the 2016 Tacoma, especially with the V6s, because the 2015s are gas hogs. Like my truck on the interstate, if it does 20 miles to a gallon, I am dancing in the front seat. It's usually like 19. And if I'm loaded down heavy, it's making 17 to 18 miles per gallon. Like it's almost in Chevy V8 territory for fuel economy. It's dead reliable. It starts every time. It runs beautifully. Tacomas have a reputation for lasting hundreds of thousands of miles. But the second gens were not fuel efficient. So the third gen, they tried to push that by reprogramming the transmission, changing the gear ratios, and it tends to want to get into the highest gear humanly possible as fast as possible to save fuel. That's just the way that works. I know you want a manual, which
I've leaned away. I've leaned kind of away from a manual. I do want a manual, and that's one reason why I started looking at Tacomas. But the more I start talking to some people, the more I been just doing research, the more I've been thinking about it. I mean, I want this. I'm going to buy a truck, and my goal is to have it basically for the next, 10 years or so. And I'm like, well, do I really want a manual for 10 years? Like I want one now, but down the road, it's like, okay, well, do I really want one? What if I get injured? Like I'm single. Like if I get injured, I have one car. It's not like I have a wife or a girlfriend or something that I can borrow her car for a matter of time if I injured my leg or something like that, doing something. So then if that happens, you're kind of limited on actually what you can drive if you can't move and you can't push that clutch in. And then on top of that, it's like, towing with the manual, it's not, it can be done, but sometimes, sometimes it can be a pain in the butt. But so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I ended up and then resale value too. It might be a little bit harder to resell a manual, but so I decided I'm going automatic because I started looking, and that's the thing is like I started looking away from Toyota now too. I've been looking at GMC, been looking at 1500s and the Colorados and stuff like that. But the thing that brought me back to Toyota again was one, the aftermarket. And then also two, just the reliability and honestly the price for what I can get. Like, because I'm right now in the market. If anybody's been looking at the market, everybody knows that the market is crazy inflated as far as prices go.
Our first banner is
right, yeah.
The auto market is ugly.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Mr. Bobo.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is just researching. I remember before, like pre-pandemic crap, like pre-COVID BS. I could price out a Tacoma and I could see them online for a brand new for around, 36,000. And over the last couple of years, 3 years really, that same truck spec'd out was 40,000. So prices have went up a little bit. Used prices are still through the roof, and that's why I'm looking at basically brand new. Just because the fact that anything in the last like couple years, they still want 35,000 for. I saw a Toyota. Like I told you this before. I driving to work, I saw it was a really nice. It was like the snow cap white Toyota Tacoma. If I remember right, I think it was like a 2000. I think it was like a 2018 or something like that. If I remember right. But it was like 110,000 miles on it, and they still wanted like 27 grand for it. I was like, holy crap! Like, and that's what kind of got me looking at like basically brand new. Is the 2022s, 2023s, just because of it's like if I'm going to spend $20,000 to $30,000 on a vehicle that's got 100,000 miles on it, well, I'm going to save up a down payment, and I'll have a down payment. I'm close to my goal. My goal is for a $10,000 down payment. Well, if I can put down $10,000 on a down payment, sell my Jeep, either see what I can get for trading, which probably won't be nothing, so I won't trade it in, but sell it private party, get a couple thousand for that, and then have enough money to sell or to pay basically the taxes on the Toyota. I mean, I'm going to be sitting around 31,000, depending on the final price of the truck. So I'm like, so I can get there and I can get something with basically 0 miles, brand new, and be in the same kind of area. And that's the thing that's and I know Toyotas are reliable, but you look at like a 2018 or so, I mean, we're in 2023, that's 5 years old already. And so not only are you 5 years, it's 5 years old, but it has 110,000 miles on it. I'm like, I kind of I want this truck for a long time. I want to be able to do stuff with it. I want to mod it. And that's kind of like my idea is over the last, my entire life, really, since I started on a gun journey, buying guns and building ARs and all kinds of stuff, like I've had fun modding ARs, setting them up all kinds of different ways. And I'm like, I want to focus on something different. Prepping, the preparedness aspect of having a vehicle that you can jump in and you can go, and it has extra fuel on the side. It has plenty of storage and stuff. It has the ability to camp in it if you need to and stuff like that. I just like I really like the aspect of the all-in-one, the all-in-one truck. And so that's why I've been really researching that. Now there's a lot of companies out there that have the campers, the tents that are on top of the truck, or up in the bed and stuff. And was it Tommy and Tim at the last prepper camp I was at 2 years ago? Like Tim had his Tundra and Tommy had his Jeep, and it was
Tim had a Titan.
Was it a Titan? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a Tundra, but yeah, it was a Titan.
Oh,
but,
and you missed it at this prepper camp. Tim and his wife upgraded. They showed up in a very, very nice built out van.
Oh, really? The Sprinter van?
Mm-hmm.
Those are nice.
It was very nice. It was the kind of thing that I had to keep Mrs. Matter of Facts out of, because the next thing I know, that would have been the only way I'd have got her camping ever again for life. It was very, very nice.
Kyle says that he has a 4Runner I can test drive. And actually, I have one of my best friends that lives in Arkansas. She came up and visited a number of years ago, and she has a 4Runner. And I love it. I love the 4Runners. They're awesome. But, man, they are expensive.
Oh, they are pricey. But the other problem is, like, I find that there's truck people and then there's SUV people. And, like, my wife is an SUV person. That's why she has a Grand Cherokee. And I am just never going to be an SUV person. Like, there are more moments in my life where I think to myself, God, I'm glad I have a truck, than I think, God, I wish I had an SUV.
Well, what's nice is you have the ability to have an SUV if you want one, and then you have the ability you have a truck now if you want one. Like, that's what's nice about having a wife that has another vehicle. Like, you guys can say, well, you have an SUV and I have a truck, and you can kind of plan them out different ways. Like, especially if you think about prepping. If you think about the idea of having to bug out, how much space you guys have between your truck and her SUV, what you guys could fit in if you guys ever had to bug out, and that's big.
Well, in the fact that, like, her cargo space is climate controlled and fully enclosed and fully waterproof,
right.
And even with my soft topper, there's still water intrusion into that bed. It's not much. Like, after a really hard rain, I might have like an eighth of a cup of water swimming around in the bottom of the bed. Like, it's not enough to bother anything, but it's worth noting that if you put stuff in that bed, it is not 100. It's never going to be 100% dry.
But that's the thing is, if you guys ever had somewhere where you ended up having to stay in the vehicle with her Jeep, you can lay the back seats down and you can kind of make a makeshift bed, to where if it's raining and stuff like that, where you're soft topper, I mean, I'd rather, it might, I'd rather sleep in the area where it's climate controlled and, better insulated than, I mean, it's going to get cold, but it's better insulated than the back of the truck with the soft topper on it.
But so you're thinking about this from Michigan perspective, and down here in Louisiana, except
it gets cold down there.
It gets cold, but it doesn't get as cold for near as long. But the other problem we have is the opposite problem, which is heat. And in that case, I can roll up the sides of that soft topper and just have basically a little tent above my head to keep the sun off me and have airflow.
Right, but what's nice about but going back to you guys having two vehicles, you have the ability to say, well, it's too hot, let's do this with mine. Okay, it's too cold, or it's going to cool down, let's do it with yours. Like, you have that choice, which is nice.
Yeah. So let's cross this off the list, and then let's progress towards talking about like specific ideas you're thinking about. But like, I know before we started the show, we were talking about like kind of the pros and cons of really purpose building a vehicle and modifying it for a very specific purpose, or trying to maintain flexibility. And it's not just like flexibility, it's flexibility in a lot of ways, but to me it's like I've seen people who will take and modify a vehicle so extensively that it does one thing amazingly and it sucks at everything else. Like a track car that is so undrivable, it's so stiffly sprung, it's so low, it's undrivable on the streets. Or in this case, a truck that has been so extensively modified for like rock crawling, off-roading, mudding, whatever, it is functionally undrivable on the streets. It won't go over 50 miles an hour. The tires howl on the friggin' highway. It gets horrible gas mileage. It's not functioning as a daily driver any longer because you've modified to that extent. So like, where's your balance point? Because I know you have an idea of what you want this truck to do, but how much are you willing to compromise a stock, comfortable daily driver in the pursuit of that? Like, where's the balance point?
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is like I mean, I want it to be purpose built. I don't know, it's like I want to be able to hop in it, and if I want to go camping, I might have to throw a backpack of clothes in or something. But I want to have the recovery gear in the back, in the back if I want it. If I do, because I mean, I'm not planning on rock crawling with this thing, but I mean, I've got a friend of mine with a Jeep, and he's gotten to the off-roading a little bit with, he's got a bunch of friends and stuff that they go through, especially at the winter and everything. And that's just a lot of fun. And so, so I've been looking at that. So I've been looking at different recovery equipment and stuff, just to be able to get out of snow areas. And I mean, up here, especially in the winter and stuff, in case you ever, even if you slide off the road, it'd be nice to be able to actually, again, it comes down to being independent and not having to rely on somebody else. Yeah, you're right. The Prius, the gas mileage, man, on a Prius, that would be nice.
Kyle thinks you need to go the A-Team way.
Oh, yeah, the Astro van. Because that's great in Michigan in the winter.
I mean, it'd be good in Detroit.
Yeah, right.
Especially with a couple of guys with Mini 14s hanging out in it.
You do have my attention now.
Now we're talking.
If I can get a bunch of guys with Mini 14s and AKs, I'll think about it.
So I know that you're thinking down the road of recovery gear, which I have thoughts and opinions on most of. I know you and I talked about like you're really not interested in lifting the truck, modifying suspension at this point, unless something pushes you in that direction.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, my garage. I have a garage that it's not. It's a one stall, not super tall. Garage, so I don't want to get big bulky tires and a suspension kit and not be able to park in the garage. That's
how much space?
What's that?
My lights just blinked. Interesting. But anyway, when you get to the point, okay, then That being said, if you're going to park in your garage, the very first thing you need to do is measure how much clearance you have and make sure that your truck will fit in the
Yeah.
garage.
Well, I'm planning on it. Hey, that's
The
actually something
very,
I'm planning on today. Is
yeah,
I'm going to go look at trucks today, actually. And I mean, today for everybody who's listening in the future, today is March 4th.
the very
Saturday,
next
March
thing you
4th.
have to do if you decide to buy a truck and you put it in your garage is get it halfway through the door and measure how much space you have above it. Because
Hmm.
let's just say I know a guy through one of the truck forums that had a very nasty little surprise waiting for him when he put a roof rack on his truck in the garage.
Yeah.
And then he went to
Nope.
back out.
Nope. I already planned on, before I leave today, I already planned on taking my measuring tape and measuring from the ground, especially since we lost all the 2 inches of ice that we had on the ground in front of my garage. I plan on taking a measuring tape and measuring from the ground all the way up to the door, making sure seeing what I have for clearance and that's the thing is like I want to be able to park in the garage. I guess at the end of the day, if I can, I can't. But uh, winter tires, I do not run winter tires. I run all terrain. That's what I've always had my entire life. Ever since I got a Jeep, my first Jeep, I've always had all terrain tires. um,
Yeah, and I don't have a huge need for winter tires down where I'm at, but I'd still make a point of running like 4 season all terrains.
yeah,
Just, and that's more down here because like, even though even though a winter tire is not going to help tremendously on ice, like I don't have so much to worry about snow down here. My big worry is that we get conditions that are perfect for making ice on bridges, and I live in the state of 1,000 bridges.
mhm.
Like there's a bridge over a stream or a river almost within 10 minutes of me any direction I drive. So it was a
Yeah, no,
concern.
yeah, no, I do all terrain. I've never had issues with all terrain. And partially the reason why I've never done winter tires slash summer tires too, excuse me, is the space. I've never had space to store a set of four tires. Uh, just because it's like rims and tires, and it's okay. Now put them in the corner, cover them, do all the what you got to do. But then, yeah, I've never had space, so I've always just done all terrain, and then that's been fine. So yeah, no, I'll probably just plan on sticking with all terrain because it just makes more sense for me. But yeah, but I mean, I like I've been looking at. I was telling you, you were talking about suspension and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not planning on doing anything with suspension unless, like you said, unless I have to, and that's going to be based off of weight,
Yeah.
depending on how much, depending on what I do and how much what I put in the back, and because I've been looking at the deck system, and I know a lot of people don't like it because it does take up, it takes up a good chunk of your bed. But I got to look at, okay, well, one, the space that you gain with that, the for storage, and then on top of that, the ability to, if I do need to haul something in the bed, you still have any room in your bed to put stuff in and strap it down, and then you can haul wood. You can do all, if you have a tonneau covered and stuff like that, you can still do all that crap. The other thing I like about it is it's about 200 pounds and it adds that weight to the back of your truck. Now, the downside of it is, again, it takes up a lot of your bed. It
Hmm.
also adds 200 pounds that is always on your leaf springs. And I have heard that some people after, probably after a few years, they have to look at, they check they say check your suspension because 200 pounds, 250 pounds or so every single day, sitting on your squatting, though, even that it might not be a lot, but you still get fatigue in the springs. And one girl I was watching on YouTube was saying that she noticed that her bed kind of goes down a little bit, or her bed is actually, even with that deck system out, it still is actually squatted uh, more than what a stock is. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, look at that. And so, I mean, but again, it all depends on weight and stuff like that. So, but if I have to upgrade the suspension, then so be it. It's something you got to do down the road in order, you got to pay to play in a way. So
And
if I want to add all this stuff, you gotta upgrade the suspension.
and fortunately, like Add-a-leaf systems exist for the stock leaf packs, and if you wind up having to go down that route, there are a couple of 3-leaf progressive add-a-leaves. I think Headstrong, and there's one other company I'm having trouble remembering off the top of my head, but I can look it up if that becomes an eventuality down the road. I mean, like I said earlier, the good thing is if you're getting into the Tacoma ecosystem, A, I'm familiar with it, and B, it's extensive. But like you have a lot of options for upgrading the rear leaf pack if you need to deal with continuous weight. If you were going to be like towing a trailer or doing something that was going to be occasional weight, I would really push you in a different direction. But like you said, that kind of depends on not just the weight of the deck system, but the weight of all the stuff you keep in the truck at all times. If that winds up being 300 pounds, you might wind up wanting to put an add-a-leaf in your leaf pack just to put a little more arch into it, bring the rear end back up to the factory rake. I'm actually debating on that with myself right now because my truck, I have a 2015 SR5, and I came across the chance to grab some TRD off-road suspension off of a 3rd gen for like practically nothing. So I got the whole front coilover assemblies and the rear Bilsteins for a song. And when I put that on my truck, it leveled my truck out. So I have no rake anymore.
Nice. Yeah, and I've been looking at, and that's the other thing too, is I've been researching the different packages, the different styles and stuff like that, the SR, SR5, the Tacoma, the Pros, the off-roads and stuff like that. And I'm leaning more towards the off-road.
The TRD off-road?
Yeah. I've been leaning more towards the TRD off-road just because the upgraded suspension that it does have, it comes with Bilstein shocks. And so like just the upgraded suspension and just some of the other features that it has, the rear locking differential and stuff like that.
The rear locker is probably like the single biggest. In my opinion, it's probably the single biggest upgrade the TRD off-road brings to the table. I mean, you get like the rear, the 110 outlet in the bed, which, I mean, do your research into that because it's there. It does not provide a ton of power though. Like I think I think it's only good for like 100 watts when you're parked, and I think it'll spit out that 400 watts max when the vehicle is like turned on and driving. So you're talking about 1 or 4 amps, which is not a ton. It ain't gonna run a power tool, put it that way.
Right. I mean, but that's the thing is, am I looking at running a power tool? No.
But I guess what I'm saying is like, to me, I don't look at that power outlet and think, ooh, that gets my jimmies rustled. Like, to me, the TRD off-road, what it really brings to the table is you get a locking rear diff and you get the Bilstein suspension, which I know a lot of people in the Tacoma world, especially a lot of guys that off-road a lot extensively, are kind of critical of the stock TRD off-road suspension in terms of capability. Like, they want to put on Bilstein 5100s or 5160s. They want to dive into the Icon or the King or the Fox ecosystem. And the one thing I will say is that what the TRD off-road suspension gives you, those specific Bilsteins give you, because I've talked to a guy who actually went through, like, started the TRD off-road, or actually he started where I did, an SR5, put on TRD off-road suspension, and then upgraded, and then changed from that to Bilstein 5100s, and he ended up going back to the TRD off-roads. And he said the one thing that the TRDs give you that, like, no reasonably priced aftermarket suspension will is comfort. Because he said in his experience, and I have to take his word on because I haven't gone that route, but he said until you get into like King or Fox or Icon or really high dollar coilovers, he said nothing rides as good as the TRD off-road suspension. So while it's not perfect, because some people don't like the falling rate Bilstein shock valving, that's just Bilstein. You either like Bilstein or you don't. But, basically it was to get the same comfort and more capability cost 10 times as much, which, I hate to say it, that tends to be my experience regarding suspension from the aftermarket world, like for racing and autocross and everything, is you can get OEM levels of comfort and race car capability, but it is not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You can get race car capability and it rides like an ox cart. That's not that hard. It's making it comfortable that becomes the trick. So that's again the balance point of, do I really want this thing to be a heavy duty rock crawler and mutter? Or do I want this thing to actually like ride like a reasonable 21st century vehicle on the highway?
Right. Yeah, the other thing that I've been looking at too is air intake and stuff. What?
Before you go down that road, to answer Kyle's question, I don't know that you have I suspect what your 4Runner has, and I'd have to look into it because I'm not exactly a 4Runner guy. But I suspect your 4Runner, if your drivetrain is what I think it is, which I don't remember what year your 4Runner is, but I think it's pretty similar to the second gen Tacomas, which you actually have. He said it's all-wheel drive. Is it though? Because I thought the 4Runners had a traditional transfer case like the Tacomas do. I will have to research further. It's 2014? No. Kyle, it's not all-wheel drive. It might say all-wheel drive on it, but what you have is a traditional transfer case. Unless I've got my Toyota wires completely crossed, you have a 4-liter V6, possibly the 4.6 V8. I don't know. Remember off the top of my head, I don't think I ever asked you, but I've literally seen this vehicle before. But your drivetrain is very similar to what I have in the Tacoma. You have a traditional center transfer case, so when you engage 4-wheel drive, there is no quote-unquote center differential. Your transfer case engages the front drive shaft, so your front and rear axles are locked together at that point. What Andrew's talking about in the TRD off-roads, and what I believe you can actually get in the higher trim 4Runners, and you can certainly get in like the Lexus GSs, is a rear locking differential, so that not only do you engage the transfer case, so you lock your front and rear axles together, but you can also lock the rear differential so that both the rear wheels spin, even if one of them's up in the air. Which, without that, like, let's think for a moment. We have your vehicle decides to like imitate a dog peeing on a fire hydrant, lifts one of its rear wheels. In an all-wheel drive vehicle, all of the power goes to all 4 wheels equally, and then if one wheel loses traction, all the power goes to that one wheel. So one wheel up in the air on all-wheel drive, you don't go anywhere because all the power goes to the one wheel that's up in the air spinning. In a 4-wheel drive vehicle, your front and rear axles are locked together, so if you lift one of your rear wheels, the other one loses power because all the power goes to the wheel with the least amount of traction that's just spinning in the air. But your front axle, if both those tires are still on the ground, you're still moving because they're still digging because your front and rear axles are locked together. So that's the difference between all-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. And I don't believe the 4Runners ever had an all-wheel drive system that I'm aware of. It might say all-wheel drive, but that's because it drives me crazy that auto manufacturers have done a really awful job of explaining the difference between all-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. To the point where they'll even, like, look, it drives me crazy whenever I hear somebody with, like, a Honda CR-V say, I've got 4-wheel drive, and I'm like, no, you don't. You have a glorified Honda Accord with a clever all-wheel drive system, and if you take it off-road, you're gonna die. It's not 4-wheel drive. 4-wheel drive is 4-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is all-wheel drive. They are very different systems. They do very different things. All-wheel drive is a phenomenal system on pavement, in inclement weather, in the snow, in the rain. It is an awesome system. But when you're off-roading, you want 4-wheel drive, which is very, very different. And even though the auto manufacturers have done a wonderful job of convincing most of the public that they are the same thing, they are absolutely not, and they work very differently. Mm-hmm. Now I'm off my soapbox. I should have warned everybody, my first career I was studying for before I changed majors was actually automotive technology, so this was literally what I was going to do for a living, was be a car nerd.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a hobby now.
Well, I was a car nerd before I went to college, so it was kind of a natural progression.
Yeah. No, I do want to do like the one thing I've been finding is even with the deck system and stuff like that, just even not adding that much weight into it. The one thing that I was told, or I've been researching as well, is I want to do a better intake, air intake and stuff like that. The one I can't think of the name off the top of my head, which one it is, what brand it is, but the video I was watching on it, she basically before she installed it, she was getting like, the average 18 or 18, 19 on highway, 20, 21 throughout the city and stuff. And she installed the air intake, and actually her highway bumped up to like 20, 21 miles an hour, or 20, 21 miles to the gallon. So so I've been looking at, and so I've been looking at just like minor things to do off the bat. So
Yeah, the only thing I get really antsy about when it comes to air intakes is like, your air intake is not just the thing on the front of your engine that takes up space. It's this. It's literally there to make sure that you don't wind up with dust, debris, and crap in your engine.
right.
So the thing that makes me nervous is that anytime we start talking about changing front air intakes, we have to make sure that whatever filter we're using is at least as good as OEM. And in my experience, a lot of them aren't. Like, this comes from even back when I had a track car and I did used to run aftermarket intakes. I wound up going back to factory because I was seeing so much dirt and crap get by that aftermarket filter that, like, all throughout the intake system, I had dust inside the piping up to the throttle body. And I was not content with that. So I wound up putting a factory airbox back on, factory paper filter, and I actually ducted in air to the bottom of that filter box from a high pressure zone on the car, so that as I was driving, I had the air hitting the front of the car, creating a high pressure zone, forcing air into the airbox.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually helped. But yeah, that's the only thing that makes me nervous.
So the one that she was using, it's actually a Toyota TRD Performance air intake system.
Okay.
And it comes with like the filter and stuff that she was showing. Like, it comes with, because that's what she was saying, was she was saying the same thing. Like, you want to make sure that the filter itself is just as good, if not better, and all this stuff. And so she was saying the one of the things that she does, especially, she was saying she changes her own oil in the video. But she said if you ever take your oil, or if you ever go and you get your oil changed, she goes, make sure like that they just tell them don't change the air filter, because a lot of times these places will just change the air filter, throw the other one away. Well, they put one in that's usually not as good as the one that comes with this package. So, but yeah, I don't know, it's something like that. Like, I've been just looking at mods to do, like cheaper ones to do off the top of, like, right off the top, to have fun with. But yeah, I mean, going back to Jim, I mean, he's a Jeep guy. I've had a Jeep for
as long as I've known you, which has been a hot minute now.
This is my third Jeep, if I remember right. I had when I was 21, I had a little manual four-banger, four-cylinder Toyota that I loved. Engine started knocking on it, so I got rid of it. Actually, I gave it to my grandpa, and he actually repaired the engine and drove it for a number of years too. But yeah, no, I've had this is my third Jeep. I like Jeeps. It's just I'm ready to switch it up, and I just want to go back to a truck. And I refuse to get the Gladiator, just because if I want a Jeep, I'll get a Jeep. If I want a truck, I'll get a truck. But
I will say that the one thing about the Gladiators, like total sidebar, that has impressed me is when I first saw the Gladiator, I probably had the same initial thought most people did, which was, okay, you took a 4-door Wrangler or JK and you chopped it into a truck bed. Cute. Like, I wasn't impressed by it until I started looking into all of the engineering that went into the Gladiator, to the point where, like, have you noticed that the wheels on the Gladiator, they look very similar to the wheels on the JKs? They are a completely different part number from Jeep, because the factory wheels on the 4-door Wranglers
could not safely carry the same amount of weight that the frame and the suspension on the Gladiator are rated for. So Jeep actually had designed and built a completely different part number wheel specifically for the Gladiator, so that the wheel could safely carry the weight that the vehicle was rated for. But they made it look just like the other Jeeps, and that's kind of the story of the Gladiator, is that we want it to look like a Jeep, but we've redesigned like the entire vehicle, purpose built, even though it looks like a Jeep, but it's designed to be a very different vehicle because it's rated for so much more weight.
Right.
Like, it was interesting that they were so, you know, they wanted to stay within the Jeep ecosystem or the Jeep appearance, but they really did do a ton of re-engineering to make it a legitimate half-ton truck. I mean, I was more impressed with it than I initially was. I would still never jump out of Toyotas to Jeeps.
Yeah,
Just
no,
me
I
personally.
mean, but that's the thing is, like, I've seen, like, there's a guy on YouTube that I've been following. I started following, and he's got a modded out Jeep Gladiator, and I mean, it is sweet. I love his setup. But no, I mean, and that's the thing is, I don't know. I want to go back to a truck. I've been wanting a truck for, I don't know, a number of years now. I wanted a truck back before I wrecked my last Jeep, and I got this one. But I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm finally in a spot where I think I can, you know, I'll get one, and I just want to have fun with it. Like I said, you know, like, especially like I've been seeing some of the mods that you've been doing. And even though they're just minor, they're effective, they're efficient, and they're purpose driven for the mods that you're doing. And I mean, just looking at it, I just want to have fun with it.
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of walk the listeners through a little slideshow I've stabbed together real fast. Just, this is things I've done to my truck, and most of it kind of has a purpose to it. But I'm sure that there's things I didn't put in here that Andrew's going to have questions about and thoughts about, and probably things I didn't even think to include. But this wasn't one of the first things I did, but, like, let's just call it what it is. I haven't had a vehicle with a totally stock car audio system since I started driving. So this truck, I kept the factory head unit, I jettisoned the stock speakers, I added a subwoofer, and I added a pair of amplifiers that are all tapped into the factory radio. So if you look in through my windows, the truck looks bone stock. There's no big booming sound system. There's no, you know, cutesy screens. It looks like a factory SR5 Tacoma. Everything I've done as far as car audio system is tucked away. Those two amplifiers are hidden underneath the driver's seat. Everything's run under the carpets. The subwoofer's behind one of the back seats. It all hides, which was kind of a thing with me because, like, I use a fair amount of the storage in my truck. Everything underneath the back seats is filled with stuff. Everything behind the seats is filled with stuff. So I had to find places to put the stuff that was where that subwoofer is now, which is why I didn't do bigger booming sound system, because, like, it just comes to a point where, like, I use the truck and whatever I put into it kind of has to either replace factory stuff, fit in the same space, or I have to consider where am I going to put all the stuff that stays in this truck all the time. The one thing I didn't get a picture of, which I'm kind of kicking myself for now, is you've seen the rack that I have kind of above the rear seats, right? It hangs from the ceiling.
Yeah, I do like that.
That comes from a company called Miso Customs, and it's just a molly rack. It's an aluminum. It's a molly rack that attaches to the rear where the grab handles would be above the rear seats. And I've got just a handful of molly pouches hanging from that. But that's got, like, you know, a Streamlight ProTac 2 hanging from it at all times. And I got a spare pack of battery, like a whole spare bulk pack of Streamlight batteries in an admin pouch. And I've got a tourniquet hanging from there. And I've got an IFAC. And I have one of these hanging from that rack, a Element fire suppression device, which, by the way, I'm taking one of these with us to Arkansas, and we're going to try to put out a campfire with it to see how it works. I've been meaning to test one of these things for a while, independently, and it's going to happen in Arkansas. So if it doesn't work, we'll all find out real fast. But, so I've got all that stuff stored up there. I've got, I don't even know how much water. I've got bottles of water in like every little nook and cranny in the truck I could fit them. I've got 6 water bottles in the doors. Just, can never have too much of that. I've got a little pack with 3 mainstay rations behind one of the back seats. I've got a tarp and a poncho, so I've got rain gear. I've got some little battery operated, they're kind of battery operated emergency flares. Mm-hmm. So they have little bases where you can stick them down the road, or they have magnetic bases. You can put them on the side of your vehicle if you get broken down. Like I've got emergency.
Like I had at the when I was on the fire department.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of emergency roadside stuff, and it's just stuff you really should have if you have a vehicle. Period, but definitely having a truck, like having rain gear down here in Southeast Louisiana is pretty much a 24-hour day, 7-day a week thing. Like you should just have a raincoat or an umbrella in your vehicle at all times because we have Florida weather.
A vehicle though, and that's the thing is like, I could do it with my Jeep I have now. And I haven't done like any really modifications to my current Jeep, but I just haven't had the urge to like I do with this what I'm looking at. But it's just one of those things where it's an extension of your bug out plans, or even bug in plans. But it's an extension of what you want to, your end goal, which is to survive. And so the more gear that you have, if you have a backpack, like a bug out bag that you want to throw in there, great. But having extra water, having an extra case of water in there somewhere, having rations, having some food stashed away somewhere, having stuff that you can actually do, extra fuel that you can strap in and throw on or strap in or something, like just having that stuff available, like it's for a good purpose. And being able to be independent and survive on your own and like not have to rely on others, like that's why what we talk about.
Mm-hmm. This was probably one of the earlier mods I did to my truck, which I wholeheartedly encourage you and everybody else to do, is I got a kit from one of the guys on the Tacoma forum, and I put bed lights in the truck. So this is just 2 strips of weatherproof LEDs that actually attach underneath the cargo rails in the Tacoma. And I did not follow the factory instructions because I didn't like the way he recommended wiring it, even though it would have been easier. But I really I have a thing about electrical wiring where I always want to follow the factory wiring branch. So when I saw the way this gentleman recommended this be wired, it was not following the factory wiring branch, which I understand why. Having done it, I understand why he didn't recommend doing that, because it goes above the fuel tank and it's a pain in the butt to get there. But I'm really anal retentive about wiring, so I followed the factory wiring branch and tossed this guy's instructions in the trash. And I wired this to a factory fit switch in my dashboard that is hooked to constant power. So this only draws like, I don't know. I sat down and did the math. I think this draws like an amp at most for these 2 strips of LEDs. So having a 150-minute reserve capacity on my Group 27 battery, I'm not worried about dragging the battery down if I leave this on for like an hour or 2. But this gives me the ability in the dark to press a button on the dash, light up the whole bed, and be able to see what I'm doing and be able to load and unload the truck. Because like primarily, yes, this is my daily driver, but the primary purpose of this truck was to go camping, and more than once, we've been running around with flashlights in our teeth because we were unloading or packing up in the dark.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the mods that I see, like starting out, is adding lights to the truck, adding lights to the bed.
Dude, I cannot even describe to you. It seems like a simple thing, but you will find yourself just stabbing that button, turning them on.
Oh yeah.
Often. Because it's just so, especially even now more that I have a soft topper, because now the bed is enclosed. But I can, like, if I'm just looking for something back there in the dark, all I gotta do is just hit the button and go look, and bam, the whole bed is lit up. It's beautiful, really is. So, on this picture on the right, this is something you will see in Tacomas a lot. If you're gonna look,
the bed. What's the word I'm looking for? Stabilizer or whatever.
Yeah, bed braces.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about a deck system, I don't honestly know if you can even use these with the deck system.
Yeah, I believe you can.
Okay. The primary reason behind these is because the Tacomas have a composite inner bed. Tacomas are kind of known, mostly if you get a camper or a fiberglass top, and you have the weight of that fiberglass top constantly pushing on it. They're kind of known for the very tops of the bed over time will deflect outwards, and eventually it'll crack the bed. It does bad stuff if you let it get far enough. So these were an effort to kind of reinforce those corners, and I put them in mostly to have additional tie down points. And because even though I didn't have a topper on my truck, I did see the top deflected out slightly. Like, you could tell from looking at the gap between the tailgate and the sides of the bed that the tops might have deflected outwards a bit. And I don't know if that was from the previous owner or what, but I put a set in for those reasons, just give it a little bit of reinforcement. The other thing I did was, and this was the only picture I have of it, but before I put the soft topper on, in an effort to have more cargo carrying space, I actually got a Max Haul roof basket. I kind of had to fudge around with the brackets that were included with it so I could attach to my OEM roof rack. Mm-hmm. And to that, I have a Max Haul, literally big PVC waterproof bag so that I can take our tents, our sleeping bags, big fluffy, really lightweight stuff, and I can pack it all up on top of the truck, kind of pull it, ratchet it down to the roof. But that lets me put all that big fluffy stuff that doesn't weigh a lot up on top of the roof, and then have more space in the bed for heavier stuff. I don't need to do that if it's just me on a camping trip, like going to prepper camp. When I have my family and I have extra stuff in the truck, I needed that space to be able to fit all the stuff for the three of us in the bed and be able to put the lighter weight stuff up on the top. The other thing I did was, you can see that awning. That awning is attached directly to the roof basket. So the idea there was, we were talking earlier about flexibility. I don't keep this roof basket on my truck full time. I don't. It kills it. It hurts my gas mileage noticeably, like not horribly, but noticeably, and it absolutely causes like the wind noise of a Cat 4 hurricane when I'm driving down the highway. It's not pleasant. Now, a differently designed roof rack that sits closer to the roof might be better, but in my case, what I decided to do is basically make kind of an ecosystem that I bolt onto the truck when I'm camping, and when I'm not camping, I take the whole thing off and it lives in my shed.
Right, but that's the thing is, if that works, that works for you. Like,
yeah. But I guess what I'm saying. But I guess I'm saying is, like, those are the trade-offs of, if I'd have put another kind of roof rack on that would have lived on the truck permanently, I'd had to live with that wind noise permanently, but then I would have also made some kind of a quick release bracket so I could take the awning off and then store the awning and just put the awning on instead of putting the whole roof rack on. I have not tried, even though I know it would fit, I haven't tried to put the roof rack on with the soft topper. I don't, because what I used to do is I used to get up in the bed, and then from the bed, like standing up against the back of the cab, put the roof rack on. And with that awning, it has some weight to it. So I'm thinking if I ever got back in the situation where I had to put that back on the truck, or I even decided to, just to have the awning and, the ability to put some lighter weight stuff up there, I'm kind of thinking I would have to temporarily fold the soft topper down so I could get into the bed, put the roof rack on, get that bolted down nice and tight, then put the soft topper back up, which fortunately I thought ahead about. Awnings like this come in super handy if you're truck camping. I will say, having used mine a time or two, if the wind is anything but zero, you better stake it down really, really tight. And even if you stake it down really, really tight, if the wind gets too much, it's going to fold that thing right over the truck and snap it off the truck. Like it's just kind of a thing. I see Tyler saying, put a piece of plexiglass. See, in my case, the way that this is done, because I have the factory roof bars are about that far off, that far above the roof of the truck, and then I've got a roof rack on top of that. I've got a decent aero deflector on the front of the roof rack, but the problem is the whole thing is so far up above the roof of the truck because I'm stacking things on top of each other. It's an imperfect system that was always meant to be removable. And if I sacrifice being able to remove it, I could make it nicer, but what I can't make in my experience is something that's nicer than having no roof rack at all. And that's kind of that was why I've gone the direction I did, because by putting the roof rack on top of the factory roof bars when I don't want the roof rack, those factory roof bars fold. So they're now, they're parallel to the direction of travel, and the amount of additional wind noise the OEM roof rack has over a naked roof is negligible in my experience, because I bought the truck without a factory roof rack, put a factory roof rack on it.
Right.
And then putting the max haul rack on top of that, it adds a lot more wind noise than a purpose-built rack would, but neither of those, there's no aftermarket option out there that's quieter than the OEM roof rack. And again, it's a daily driver at the end of the day. So more recently, I put a soft topper on the truck. I've talked about the soft topper before. I love the damn thing. Like, it is, for my use, it is the perfect way to enclose the back of the truck, because I can remove the entire thing in a matter of minutes. I can fold it down out of the way in a matter of minutes. It gives me a super flexible option to enclose the bed and make it 98% waterproof. Like I told Andrew earlier, like in a hard downpour, I will get a little bit of water intrusion like around the seams and everything, but I've never, it's been like a little finger of water through the bed, not like everything in the bed gets trenched. So I'm very, very happy with that. And it's also like, I can't remember if I have a picture queued up. I might actually, it might be on the next slide. But the last time we went to prepper camp, I had this thing loaded up to where the stuff in the bed was almost touching the aluminum bows of the soft topper. It was floor to ceiling, wall to wall. The whole truck was stuffed, and everything was fine. I didn't have, once I seal up the back of it, I don't have to worry about loose stuff getting blown out or sucked out. It's a really nice system. The one thing that it didn't include was a third brake light, which is a legal issue for me down here in Louisiana, because I have to get a vehicle inspection every 2 years. So I put a little LED light on the back of it. I tapped it into the brake light circuit on that driver's side rear corner. It all plugs in. Y'all can see this left-hand picture. That's a 3-pin Deutsch connector bulkhead fitting. And I built my own harness and everything on the other side of that wall and to the LED light. So if I need to fold down the soft topper, I just pull that one plug and fold the whole top down, take it off, do whatever I want. So putting a third brake light on there didn't take away from what I already had in the flexibility of the soft topper. This is actually that top fully folded up with the back velcroed to the tailgate, so it fully encloses the bed. And on the right that isn't even everything in the truck yet. Like, I took that picture before I put in the cooler and the jackery and a few other things. But like, the truck was loaded up pretty much floor to ceiling, wall to wall. And the beautiful part about this was I had all this stuff in the bed, and there was not a lot of stuff inside the truck with me and my wife and my daughter, which was a first. Because in the past, when I haven't been able to pack up the bed this high, or I've had to have stuff inside the cab to make sure it stayed dry, it was still a little tight inside that 4-door truck. And this has been the very recent addition. So I bought an Iceco fridge for a Black Friday deal for the family, so we can get away from having to carry around coolers full of ice. And the biggest issue has been, I I really didn't want to have to carry it around inside the cab of the truck, because basically that winds up with my daughter crammed into a corner and this thing's sitting on the back seat. So I put in a 30 amp Blue Sea Systems breaker under the hood for this. I already have an 80 amp breaker for the car audio system. I ran an 8 gauge wire and an 8 gauge ground from the battery through that breaker all the way to the bed, which was a very interesting route to get there, but I had to follow the factory wiring because my OCD demanded it. I put in, you can see this top right picture, that's actually the storage bin that they had, the little storage bins they have in the bed of the Tacoma. Well, I took a little bit of space in one of those, and I mounted my power junction block, and I mounted my ground distribution block in there. And I also have the wire strain reliefs and everything are inside that box. So I basically turned part of that box into almost a wiring junction box or a wiring panel. Uh-huh. The only thing I keep in there anyway is bungee cords, and I've got all the positive terminals like wrapped up in electrical tape, so nothing can touch them anyway. I feel good about it. But and that box actually from the factory, it has holes at the bottom of it, so if I get a little bit of moisture in there, it'll drain back out. Really not super concerned about it. And then this bottom left picture is the Blue Sea Systems 12-volt panel that is just, you can see it's cut straight into the wall of the bed. So I've got a voltmeter, I've got a dual USB 2.1 amp port, and I've got a 12-volt cigarette lighter plug. And that bottom right is the ISCO JP50 running quite happily off of that cigarette lighter plug. Nice. And the panel has a circuit breaker disconnect on it rated for 15 amps. So if I ever try to exceed 15 amps, it'll pop it right there. If something shorts, it'll pop the breaker under the hood. And I can use the breaker under the hood also as a service disconnect, so that when I'm not using the truck camping, or if I'm going to leave the truck unattended for a while, I just go under the hood, hit that one breaker, and then this panel in the back is completely disabled from the hood.
Okay.
So I've kind of, this has been the most recent addition to the truck, and the only thing down the road is I might, because I left myself, by going with 8 gauge wire, I left myself some available options. I have enough wire that I could put an auxiliary battery in the bed of the truck and a DC-DC charger or a battery isolator between this and the main battery, so that this panel runs strictly off of my house battery, my service battery, and not off of the starting battery. I have that availability because of the size of wire that I put in. I also have the availability to take out this cigarette lighter plug and put in a twin Anderson power pole connector port, and which would cause me to have to cut off that cigarette lighter plug off the end of this and put on Andersons, but then I could also do the same with my Jackery, so that I could charge this, I could run the fridge and charge the Jackery off of this port while I'm driving. Don't know if I'm going to go that route. I can always do pass-through charging on the Jackery, where I plug the Jackery into this and then plug the ISCO into the Jackery. It'll do that. I could also put the Jackery in the cab with me and my family and charge it off a cigarette lighter plug in the front of the truck. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I wanted to make sure that I left myself options, which is also why I built that which is also why I stashed everything in that bed cubby, because now those are my power leads going to the panel and going to the front of the truck. So if I need to tap into a ground or tap into a 12-volt constant hot, I've got it right there on that lug, and it's fused. So this is the one thing I can tell everybody about modifying a vehicle is, go into it with a plan, think about it very long and hard, and try to leave yourself escape routes. Really truly think about, I don't think I'm going to want to do this down the road, but just in case I do, what do I have to do to make this accommodate that later if I choose to? Because if all I was going to do was pull 15 amps, I could have done that with a 10 gauge wire, and it would have been easier to run. Might have even been able to get away with a 12, honestly. I mean, we're only talking about, we're talking about 15 amps max, probably more like 10 most of the time. Mm-hmm. I could have got away with less wire and made my life easier, and certainly would have cost less. Because I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but copper wire is something serious these days. But
charging stations like they've been doing out in California.
That doesn't break my heart. But I'm just a malicious person. But it's just one of those things of like going to an 8-gauge wire gave me the flexibility not to have to rewire this entire silly thing all over again later. Because at this point, if I want to swap out to those twin Anderson ports and be able to pull like 25 to 30 amps through this panel, all I have to do is take that circuit breaker and turn it into a switch that engages a 30 amp relay, and then have that relay make hot an extra power junction block that I have sitting in the garage. I could drop into this, and then run 12 gauge wires from the power up into the panel in the back of the accessories. And basically, I do a little bit of rewiring, but what I don't have to do is redo that 8-gauge run back to the battery because it's already planned for the larger system.
Yeah, well, it gives you options, and that's what that's what doing this kind of stuff. I mean, that's what it's meant for, is give you options down the road, and the ghost is angry.
No, that's what happens when you bump your desk one too many times.
Yeah. No, but I mean, that's good. Yeah, no, giving you options, leaving yourself open for options is always a good thing. And then on top of that, I mean, I don't know, leaves you open for if you ever you want to mod something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, I think that's kind of the name of the game, is like going into a new vehicle purchase. Like, you have to be concerned with the financing and the availability and all the headache that comes along with that. But the next thing is you have to start really thinking about, where am I going to go with this?
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is that you want the vehicle for a purpose. You want it to do a thing. And if Toyota built vehicles to do those things perfectly without us having to fool with them, there wouldn't be a burgeoning aftermarket going back to 5 minutes after the car was invented.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a lot. But I'll definitely keep you all updated. I mean, like I said, I'm going to go look today at some vehicles just to kind of get a taste of kind of what I want. I'm not looking at buying it all. I still have a little bit to save before I hit my goal, and then on top of that, have enough to cover insurance, or not insurance, but taxes and stuff. So I'm almost there, but it's just gonna be good to go out there, and I've been just looking online, so it'll be good to go and just look. But yeah, that's where I'm at, and it's just going to be interesting to see, kind of just eventually get it, and then just start going down that rabbit hole of setting it up and making it usable and where kind of how I want it.
Well, you know who's in your corner if you have any questions, but you need to go look at trucks, and I have a honey-do list a mile long to get to today. So, Matter of Fact's podcast heading out the door. Say goodnight, guys.
Good night.
Goodbye, good morning, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
Hasta mañana.